Hey everyone, thank you for joining me again at Time to Educake. Today you'll notice that my cake is focused on what's been happening in our country the last few weeks. No matter where you look or what you're doing, it's pretty much out there. It's very hard to ignore or not be aware of. And personally, as a black woman in this country, it's not something I want to ignore, and it's something that has deeply impacted me. This isn't something new. If you're a black person in America, you are aware of a lot of these things that are being fought for and that have come to light within the last few weeks. But the last month, the sequence of events that occurred, the death of George Floyd, his murder, honestly, deeply impacted so many people. And we're in the middle of a historic civil rights movement at this point. And so I wanted to do my part, my small part, of trying to put out some useful information and some resources that I'm aware of, because I'm by no means an expert, but resources that I've gathered or I'm aware of, that can hopefully help everyone who's watching this video kind of understand what's going on if you don't. Make a decision about what you want your role to be during these historic times, and hopefully just walk away feeling a little bit more, aware of what's happening in the world and why it's happening, and the fact that you can do something regardless of your race, regardless of your background, regardless of what you believe. There is something that can be done to hopefully have this country be united and be the best version that it can be, the way that we all like to think and hope that this country is. So at the end of this video, I'll be sharing a challenge that I hope you guys will engage with. If you do, please tag Time to Educate on Instagram or Twitter. Share it with your friends and family and see how far we can take this and how much we can progress, and hopefully make a change and make a difference with the work that we're willing to do together as a community. All right, so as you can maybe tell by my intro, I made this cake months ago, in June to be exact. However, this was a really hard project for me to put together. Even though the cake was ready in June, every time I dove into the details and the research for my post, I quickly became drained and pulled away. While I tried to find the energy to finish this project, more black people were killed, like Rayshard Brooks, and more stories came out about deaths and injustices we hadn't been aware of, like that of Elijah McClain. So although some time has passed since I first started working on this project, the message and motivation behind it still, unfortunately, remain as relevant as ever. There are those who feel as though the Black Lives Matter movement isn't being acknowledged anymore because we aren't seeing it all over social media the same way we were when George Floyd was first killed. But the thing about movements is they can progress through many different avenues. Yes, we need social awareness, but we also need donations, activism, political change, education, and more. And sometimes people need an easy starting point, which is what I'm trying to provide with this cake and challenge. I really hope you'll engage with it and have others around you do the same. And keep in mind that just because you don't see something on social media, it doesn't mean that there aren't people thinking about it and working on it. The Black Lives Matter movement and the issues it's trying to address are extremely complex. I can't speak for the entire movement or for all black people, but I can and I will speak from my perspective as a black woman in this country. And I will share as many resources as I can on everything I mention, so check the description below for any links. But at the end of the day, the goal of this video and the simple challenge at the end is to get you to start your own journey of learning about these things that impact so many Americans on a day-to-day basis, and to help you discover exactly how you'd like to be a part of this movement. Don't forget that you can check out my website, timetoeducate.com, and find the blog post that correlates with this video and has a lot more information and resources for you to explore. The murder of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, was the spark that finally caused the Black Lives Matter movement to explode like we've never seen before. But there were several major events that occurred prior to it that added fuel to the fire. It also didn't help that we were still in the early months of a global pandemic. The first event was the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. He was a black man out for a jog on February 23, 2020, in Georgia when three white men decided he looked suspicious, and rather than calling the police and letting them handle it, they chose to chase this man in pickup trucks, hit him with those trucks, and eventually, when he had no choice but to defend himself, shoot and kill him. They tried to claim it was self-defense, but usually, if you're defending yourself, you aren't chasing the person you claim you're afraid of. After killing Ahmaud, these men were able to go home and live their normal lives for over 2 months before video of the murder was leaked and national outrage led to their arrests. They've finally been indicted, but we still have to see what happens once the trial starts. The fact that they were not immediately arrested and charged for their crimes is why we feel the need to remind the world that Black Lives Matter. Shortly after Ahmaud's death, we got the details about Breonna's. On March 13th, Breonna Taylor, an EMT, had been sleeping in her bedroom in Kentucky when police officers conducted a no-knock raid. Without identifying themselves as cops and with no warning, they rammed in her door and were met with a warning shot from her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker's legally registered firearm. With no warning as to what was happening, he had been trying to protect himself and Breonna from these strangers attacking his home. As a result, the officers shot into the home over 20 times, hitting Breonna 8 times and killing her. We already know the raid wasn't necessary. They have now banned no-knock raids. Breonna's family received a $12 million settlement, but only one officer has been fired, and all 3 of her killers are still free. So we still need justice for Breonna, because Black Lives Matter. Shortly after hearing about these 2 deaths and the lack of accountability and justice, there were back-to-back stories in May of white people who filed false reports accusing black men of committing crimes. By now, most people are aware of what happened between Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper, 2 strangers at Central Park. For most black people, myself included, we recognize that incident as a perfect example of a major issue in this country. A white woman felt comfortable making a false accusation against a black man while being filmed. She felt confident that she could call the police, and when they arrived, they would be on her side. Unfortunately, what made the video so unsettling is that she may have been right. Had Christian not recorded the encounter, who knows how things could have turned out. That same day, when videos surfaced showing police officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, 2 minutes of which George was completely unconscious, people couldn't sit still anymore. Both black and white people, nationally and globally, recognized what happened was so incredibly wrong that protests immediately broke out. A lot of people are aware of what happened to George. Whether you wanted to or not, you've probably seen the video. But what I've realized a lot of people aren't clear on is what crime George allegedly committed. I had been hearing that he had allegedly committed forgery and was trying to figure out what that meant. Did he walk into a bank with a fake check in an attempt to steal hundreds or thousands of dollars? Did he create a fake legal document that would allow some kind of horrific injustice to occur? And even if he had, does that mean he should have been executed on a public street? What I found out was George was trying to pay for some cigarettes with what was apparently a fake $20 bill. That was the crime he committed that led to him being restrained on the floor with 3 cops kneeling on his entire body, one of them pressing on his neck, while he cried for his dead mother, begged for his life, and had bystanders arguing with the officers to stop restraining him in such a dangerous manner and to please administer aid when he passed out. All things they failed to do. Shortly after the paramedics took him, George was pronounced dead, and because of how blatantly wrong the situation was, the officers who either killed him directly or played a part in his death were fired the next day. However, it took days of global protests before any of them were charged for their crime, and given the way many of these cases against police officers typically play out, there are those who fear they will not be found guilty. Because of a fake $20 bill and a pack of cigarettes, George had the police called on him, and 17 minutes later, he was dying, which again is why we say Black Lives Matter. These are just some of the more recent high-profile cases that have occurred. There are many we will probably never know about and many that are still waiting for justice. And for those who think the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-police, I'll just say this. We've seen plenty of instances where officers haven't killed someone who may be a threat. Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. And we've seen too many instances where innocent, black, unarmed people are killed with no consequence. So we aren't against police officers. We are against police officers who are killing people regardless of their race and without cause, and who never face consequences for their actions. The Black Lives Matter movement was created around 2013 after Trayvon Martin, the child who was killed for simply walking through his neighborhood with a hoodie, was murdered. His murderer is still free today. Black Lives Matter is a global movement focused on ending systems of oppression and protecting black people from violence. So the next time you see and hear the phrase Black Lives Matter, just remember what led to its existence and know that the people saying it are hoping there will be a day when we don't have to. But until then, black people and their allies will continue to fight to make sure that we are all treated with the respect, dignity, and equal rights that we deserve. In order to make that happen, we all need to do our part to make some changes. I suggest starting with a challenge at the end of this video and going from there. This project was emotionally draining. It was hard doing the research and reading about all these cases. I felt like I wrote a million names, but I know they're just a small portion of the lives ruined and lost due to racial inequalities and police brutality in this country. I would like to acknowledge a moment of silence as you look at the names. If you want to do something about all of this but don't know where to start, I've created this 5-day Ally Challenge just for you. For day 1, commit to being aware. Follow an account that will keep you up to date and informed on things that are happening and what you can do. For day 2, you should learn something new. Choose to engage with something. I suggest starting with 13th, which you can watch for free on YouTube now. It's phenomenal, and it's by Ava DuVernay. For day 3, try and show some support. You're going to find a lot of suggestions in the resources that I share on my site, but to start, go to justiceforbrianna.org and sign her petition. Day 4, speak up. Go back to what you learned on day 2 and start speaking to family and friends about it. It might not be easy, but it'll be worth it. Day 5, be prepared to vote. I know that sounds simple, but it's literally one of the best things you can do. Register or check your registration. And moving forward, just remember to stay committed and avoid burnout. We're not going to solve all of these problems overnight, but with dedication and persistence, we will see progress. Just remember that being an ally often means doing work quietly. Not everyone will know what you've done, but what you do will make a difference.